few weeks ago, I watched the first episode of the Ultimate Self-Defense Championships Season 2. I'm not watching any more of that. When I was watching it, I noticed that somebody had on his custom-made uniform a massive Star of David. So I thought, well, that looks like he might be a Zionist. Better check him out. And oh yes, he is. A guy called Nathan Levy. Never really heard of him before. Apparently he served in the IDF, which by definition makes him a war criminal, almost certainly. He has been spreading the beheaded babies myth. He hasn't retracted it, although he's not spreading it again now. In a recent post, he's still talking about the systemic rapes myth. There's never been any evidence of that. There's not actually even any evidence of anyone being sexually assaulted in the Hamas attacks on October the 7th. There are a couple of reports, one in the New York Times, where they claimed that a woman who had been killed had been raped first, but her family said, no, there's no evidence of that, please don't say this. And then I think there was a woman called Noah Agamami who had been taken hostage, and after she was released, a few months ago, they tried to say, some newspaper in Israel tried to say that she'd been raped while in hostage, and she said, no, that didn't happen, please don't make me more of a victim than I already am. And he's still spreading that. He's been spreading a lot of lies about October the 7th, and he's after a year into this ongoing live stream genocide, which is utterly brutal. It's been specifically targeting children a lot of the time and civilians. He's still supporting this, okay? Now I know that there are going to be people who say, oh, keep the politics out of this. Well, for a start, he's brought the politics into it by wearing that massive Star of David on his custom-made uniform. He would have asked for that. So he's brought the politics in, okay? If he's going to bring the politics in, then I should be allowed to talk about it. And let's be honest here, the people who say keep the politics out of it, what you actually mean is keep out the politics you don't like. That's what you really mean. Such fucking hypocrites, a lot of you. Now, my big problem with this is that everyone involved is supporting this genocide, okay? This genocide is going on for a year now, over a year. You don't have much excuse for not knowing about it, and you're all supporting this by having him alongside you, by appearing alongside him, by talking to him and behaving like he's a normal, reasonable person who supports genocide. A massive, horrible, brutal, year-long genocide, and it's still ongoing. There's no end in sight as yet. You are helping him spread genocidal propaganda. You are helping him normalise the idea of genocide in martial arts culture. I cannot tell you how appalling it is for a culture which is about learning to fight and kill people to have the idea of genocide being fine, normalised in a culture like that. It should not be happening. It's disgusting. You shouldn't be normalising this. Not for people who are learning to fight and kill anyway. Also, I'm not watching any of the reaction videos, okay? Look at you, especially Sensei Seth and Icy Mike. I'm sure others have been doing them, but they're the ones that I've seen. They've been doing them. I'm not watching them either, okay? It's all still promoting the genocidal propaganda, not watching them. Now, I get that martial arts influencers seem to kind of live in a bubble. And yeah, it kind of acts like the world outside isn't really much to do with them, which is looking increasingly ridiculous. I've got to say, it's just been looking ridiculous to me for years now. It's just getting so much worse. It's so ridiculous. And I think it's important to remember that a lot of people who do martial arts are right-wing because right-wingers tend to want power, they are attracted to power, and learning martial arts gives people power. That's why they're doing it, and to be fair to Nathan Levy, he's quite open about that's why he's doing it, okay? So, before I get into this too much, I'm going to define some words for you, because there's a lot of lies told about what some words mean and what they are about. And I don't expect the martial arts audience to be particularly well informed about this. And even people who are well informed still struggle, to be fair, and want to be well informed and are sympathetic to Palestinians. They're still going to struggle a lot of the time because there's a lot of misinformation around. So, first off, Judaism, the religion that is practiced by Jews. It's an ancient religion, goes back thousands of years, okay? That's all it is, it's a religion. Now, it's often muddled up with ethnicity, Jews being a race, an ethnic group, okay? Now, you'll find a lot of anti-Zionist religious Jews, and they do exist, there are plenty of them. They will tell you that being Jewish isn't an ethnicity, it's a religion. Like, you know, being Christian isn't an ethnicity, it's practicing a religion. Now, I think the idea that of Jews as a race has probably come about because, you know, historically people would normally have inherited their religion from their parents, and so it kind of often would have ended up looking like an ethnicity. But the reality is people have always been able to convert to Judaism, and currently many of the Jews who live in Israel who would say that they are ethnic Jews are actually descended from white Europeans, Eastern Europeans, who converted to Judaism hundreds of years ago. So they're not ethnically Jewish in the same way that, say, Jews who actually descended from people who were thousands of years ago were in Palestine are ethnically Jewish. They're not ethnically Jewish in the same way. Now, Zionism. Now let's be very clear here. Zionism is secular, and it's an ideology. It's a political ideology. It's not meant to be part of the religion. It's been conflated with the religion and the ethnicity in recent years, quite a lot. But historically, it was meant to be separated from the religion, and it's an ideology that was first conceived of in the late 1800s by a man called Theodor Herzl. And he was thinking about it because he wanted to have a homeland for Jews, just for Jews. Okay, so what that means is he was thinking about an ethno-state. That's what this is. It's what Israel is. It's what the ideology of Zionism is about. It's about an ethno-state. Oh, there you go. That cat wanted to let out. So yes, Theodor Herzl, he thought of the idea of a homeland just for Jews, and his reasoning was that Jews needed a safe homeland just for Jews because they caused anti-Semitism by being Jews in other parts of the world, in other countries which wasn't their homeland. So the idea of Zionism was actually born out of anti-Semitism. I'm going to link you an article about that so you can read about Theodor Herzl and his thinking on developing the ideology of Zionism. So let's be very clear. Any ideology which wants an ethno-state, proposes an ethno-state, that is a fascist ideology. It doesn't matter what the ethnicity is, it's still a fascist ideology. So Zionism is fascism. You have to understand that, because it is about an ethno-state. Israel is an ethno-state. Only Jews are allowed to be a citizen in Israel. That makes it an ethno-state. You have to understand that. So now we come to anti-Semitism. Now the reason that Zionism is often conflated with Judaism and the ethnic group of Jews is because they like to weaponize anti-Semitism to defend Zionism, to defend their genocide, to defend their oppression of the Palestinians. Anti-Semitism is a hatred of Jews, whether it's the religion or the ethnic group. Zionism is separate from the religion and the ethnic group. Often Jews are Zionists and often religious Jews are Zionists. But actually, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And actually, the largest number of group of people who are Zionists are religious Christian fundamentalists. And they're actually Zionists because it's very anti-Semitic. They want Jews to be in Israel because they believe that they will be the first to go in the rapture during the apocalypse. So you have to understand, anti-Semitism is purely about hatred of Jews, the religion, and Judaism, the religion, and Jews, the ethnic group. It is not a hatred of Zionism. Anti-fascism is anti-Zionism, actually. That's what it is. To be anti-Zionist is to be anti-fascist. Unfortunately, there are a lot of fascists who do support anti-Zionism, but I'm not going to get into that now. That's because they're very anti-Semitic. So there are a lot of fascists who do support Zionist, who are anti-Zionist, unfortunately. So Israel is the ethno-state that is currently realised on behalf of the Jews. It wasn't actually necessarily the place that was going to be the ethno-state for Jews. Like originally they were thinking of somewhere like Argentina. It was just kind of luck to do with stuff that happened in the end of World War II and Britain being in charge of what was then Palestine, being in a position to just hand it over to the Israelis. That's why it ended up being that one. Now, Palestine. Palestine is actually the occupied land. Israel is the occupier. Palestine is the land that's occupied by the Israelis. It was in existence before Israel, and actually Jews lived there in peace in Palestine alongside the Muslims for centuries, and Christians as well. It's only when the State of Israel happened, when Zionism was developed as an ideology, that there began to be problems. And there's actually a large group of anti-Zionist religious Jews who still live there today, still live in Jerusalem, I think it is, today. And they are brutally oppressed by the IDF and by the Israelis. So let's be very clear here. As far as the UN are concerned, Israel is not a real state and it's the occupier. Under international law, they are the occupiers, and under international law, Palestine and the Palestinians are the occupied lands and people. Okay? Now, let's talk about genocide. Now, there is a lot of lies that go around about genocide, what it means, what constitutes genocide. It's actually not about numbers. It's not about proportion of people killed or anything like that. It's really about the intent behind the destruction of a group. It doesn't have to be destroyed in whole. It can be destroyed in part. Now, this here is from Lemkin Institute. Now, the Lemkin Institute is set up in memory of Raphael Lemkin, who first defined genocide. He was a Jew, and his definition was used as the framework for the UN definition of genocide. It was watered down a lot because people like Winston Churchill didn't like all of the definitions because he knew damn well that he was a genocidal maniac too. Now, This is what the Lumpkin Institute has to say about what's happening at the moment. Statement calling out Israeli propaganda, released on 28th of May this year. The Lumpkin Institute has had it with the cynical lies and propaganda from Israel and the USA. One can have different views about the definition of genocide, but one may not use definitional disputes to deny genocide. If a genocide may be occurring, every nation is compelled by customary law to try to stop it. Go Yemenis! Go Hezbollah! Let us be clear. Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. The US is complicit in genocide. These are not political statements. They are statements that are made from knowledge and experience. Nevertheless, you do not need a PhD, a law degree or X-ray vision to see the genocidal dimensions of Israel's carnage in Gaza. It is clear in the behaviour of its state and its military on full display in yesterday's horrific bombardment of our Rafah camp. But even if there are legitimate doubts about Israel's genocide, there is no doubt that Israel is committing atrocity crimes of the most barbaric kind. Israel must be stopped. Israel must be stopped now. Now, I'm going to talk about self-defense. Under international law, Israel has no right to self-defense when it comes to the Palestinians, because Israel are the occupying power. They are, by definition, the aggressors. Palestinians, on the other hand, do have the right to self-defense. Now, Israel does have the right to self-protection, okay? So the Iron Dome is a good example of this. So that the Iron Dome system shoots down any rockets that are fired into its airspace, essentially. It's not killing any Palestinians, it's not harming any Palestinians, it's simply stopping Israelis from being harmed. And that's fine. In UN terms, anyway. In terms of international law. So the Palestinians do have the right to self-defense, and they also have the right to resistance. They have the right to resist the occupiers. They have a right to resist the occupation. And they do have this right under international law, according to the UN. I know that you're going to get a lot of people saying, well, the UN is anti-Semitic. Everything is anti-Semitic now. Jesus. The word is losing meaning. I'm going to tell you something about resistance. Okay? Resistance to colonial powers like Israel, resistance to people in Western imperialist powers like the UK and the USA is always justified. But another thing, there's always an attempt by these powers to delegitimise resistance, because these people, they want the monopoly on violence, okay? They want the monopoly on violence, and then they want to delegitimise any resistance that's violent against them, okay? And that is why I will never condemn Hamas, or the PFLP, or Hezbollah, or or the Yemenis, okay? Not doing that. Because resistance is justified, and the idea of condemning resistance is entirely bound up in trying to delegitimise it. Resistance is legitimate, it is justified, and it is necessary. I'll tell you why it's necessary, okay? My government, the UK government, they don't give a shit about their citizens, right? The new Labour Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he actually got the nickname Sir Kidstarver before he came to power, because he'd always said he was going to keep the 2-child benefit cap, which means that children in families with more than 2 children have a restriction on the amount of benefits they can get, and that includes working families, because a lot of working people still are entitled to means-tested benefits, and that means that children are starving. And he's insisting on keeping that, and the Labour Party have also taken away the winter fuel allowance of pensioners, which means that a lot of pensioners will freeze or starve or something. Now, a lot of them will be fine, but a lot of them won't. This is our Labour government that's doing this. They don't care about their citizens. I look at our Labour government being complicit, supporting Israel, both militarily and diplomatically, And I see a government that's got no problem with killing its own citizens. You know, they let Israel get away with that, and they want to see how far they can push it so they can know how far they can push it themselves. They'll bomb their own citizens if it suits them. They'll delegitimise all resistance. They've been doing that as it is, you know. They've been delegitimising resistance to their oppressive tendencies already, and they'll do it more. And the same goes in the US. The US doesn't care about its citizens. Government doesn't care about its citizens. I mean, there's that massive hurricane in Appalachia a few weeks ago. I know that there was very little support for people who'd lost everything. They had no home, they had nothing. Very little support for them. It's coming up to winter, and people have been getting arrested and charged with stealing because they've been taking food from shops because they've had no food. Because it's more important to do that than to actually give them some food, as far as the US government are concerned. And if you don't think the US government will bomb its own people, well, they already did. Look up the Move bombing in the 1980s, okay? They don't care about their citizens. If they are worried about losing power, they'll do the same to us. This is why we say, in our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians, okay? This is why resistance isn't just justified, it is necessary. Because what happens there will come to us one day if we don't stop it. Now, I'm going to talk about some other words that are often lied about, willfully lied about, okay? I'm not going to tell you what lies are told about them, because I don't want to accidentally reinforce any ideas, false ideas about them. Quite often, if you do that, even to debunk things, then people will still latch onto them anyway. So you do have to be careful about spreading fascist propaganda accidentally. So, first one, Allahu Akbar. Just means God is great, okay? That's all it means. Obviously, it's said in many contexts. It's said by Muslims when they pull a child out of the rubble alive in the Gaza Strip after an apartment block's been bombed. They shout it loads then. They say it in many contexts. That's all it means, okay? That's it. Now, let's talk about what intifada means, shall we? Intifada is a term we often hear in slogans related to Palestinian resistance movements, the most famous and controversial being "Globalise the Intifada." But what exactly is the meaning of intifada? The word comes from the Arabic word nafada, which is a verb meaning to shake the dust off something. It could be used literally as shaking the dust off carpets, or figuratively as shaking off one's laziness, or being finished or rid of something. He was fed up with the whole affair, so he decided to dust it from his hands. A similar sentiment is conveyed by the English expression, itself of ancient Hebrew origin, of shaking off the dust of something or someone from one's feet. As a related noun, intifada means tremor, a shudder or a shiver. The first Palestinian intifada, a turning point. It was in 1952 that the meaning of intifada took on its modern political overtone of a Middle East uprising, when a series of protests shook the then Kingdom of Iraq in an attempt to force the king's abdication in favour of a republic. It was then applied to Israeli-Palestinian conflict history when the first major Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation started in 1987. There we go. That's what intifada means. Doesn't mean any of the other things that you're told it means, okay? It doesn't. Don't even. And if anybody puts any of those meanings that are racist in the comments, I will remove the comments. I don't normally do remove comments, but I will remove any racist comments about these words. Now, jihad. The word jihad stems from the Arabic root word jihad, which means strive. Other words derived from this root include effort, labour and fatigue. Essentially, jihad is an effort to practice religion in the face of oppression and persecution. The effort may come in fighting the evil in your own heart or in standing up to a dictator. Military effort is included as an option, but Muslims view this as a last resort, and it in no way is meant to mean to spread Islam by the sword, as the stereotype now suggests. Checks and balances. Islam's holy text, the Quran, describes jihad as a system of checks and balances, as a way that Allah set up to check one people by means of another. When one person or group transgresses their limits and violates the rights of others, Muslims have the right and the duty to check them and bring them back into line. There are several verses of the Quran that describe jihad in this manner. So there you are. That's what those words mean before we go any further. Now, Jesse Yainkamp. You posted a couple of pictures in your stories proudly posing next to this genocidal maniac Natan Levy, and you posted a picture of him on your Instagram, public Instagram account. I did DM you and comment. We've not had anything to say in reply. And also had a look at Natan Levy's account. So, here is what he said after the USDC2 season came out. There was a moment when I thought I wasn't going to make it to the show. The filming was scheduled for soon after the war in Israel started. I was deeply impacted and the future was uncertain, but I chose to follow through. I wanted to show up for my country, fight hard and give my best to represent my people. I want to dedicate this win to the hostages and our soldiers to bring them home safely, fighting to bring them home safely. Just an aside, Netanyahu does not care about the hostages, let's be very clear. He's never cared about the hostages, and just today there's been some allegations come out about him and some Secret Service people conspiring to undermine any possibility of the hostages being returned. Does not care about them. And see here, liked by Karate by Jessie there. Here we go. Now, there's Jessie's comment on here. Legend in the making. Fire emoji. Well deserved, Natan. You set a new standard for USDC. Stay strong and keep fighting the good fight. Power fist emoji. Oh, look who else. Craig, regular Aussie bloke. That's their control guy. Normal guy, never done any training. Oh, and Real Ranton. Well deserved victory. Can't wait to see you in season 3. So, Jessie, who are you? I mean, you come across to me as a privileged white man, really. You've always been supported in your karate journey. Yeah, your parents run a karate school. I'm not saying you didn't work for what you've got, but you've never really had to struggle. Not in that you've not faced the systemic barriers that other people might face. And I also think that, you know, being in Sweden, where there's a much better gender equality, you actually don't even have much of a clue about the systemic barriers and oppression that women have to deal with in other countries such as my own. I don't think you have much of a clue. I don't think you really care either. I know that you've not cared whenever I've mentioned misogyny. I've got to say, I never noticed you having fascist leanings until now. But Natan Levy there is talking about carrying on supporting his own people in a genocide. That's what he's talking about there. He may not be saying the words, but that's what he's doing. And you, Jessie, you are telling him to stay strong and keep fighting the good fight for a genocide, for a brutal genocide that was in live streams for over a year now. You are telling him that. Martial artists historically were actually political. But these days, most influencers avoid sharing their political opinions on pretty much anything. All they really stand for is looking good for their fan base. And I'll tell you one thing. At least Natan Levy stands for something. He stands for something utterly abhorrent. He stands for an ethno-state. A genocidal ethno-state. That's what he stands for. But he does stand for it. He is open about it. I don't see many martial arts influencers standing for shit. You really don't. Appearing alongside Natan Levy, Jesse, being so praiseworthy of him, positive about him, kind of suggests that's what you stand for, Jesse. So, Jesse, tell us who you are. Are you a fascist, Jesse? How about you hold up this picture here of Shaban Ahmed al-Dulu burning alive with a drip in his hand in a hospital tent that's been bombed by Israel outside a hospital because he couldn't be in the hospital because that keeps getting destroyed. Tell us how that is necessary, how that is justified, because your mate Natan Levy needs his ethno-state. Do that. Go on, tell us. Or one of these many videos, pictures you can find. Palestinian children, babies, with their brains blown out and only part of their skull left. Or some of them just been outright beheaded. Hold up one of those pictures, Jesse. Tell us how that's necessary to preserve your mate Natan Levy's ethno-state. Tell us that. Or find any one of those many TikTok videos with IDF soldiers posing in Gazan women's underwear and explain to us why that's necessary to preserve your mate Natan Levy's ethno-state. Tell us who you are, Jesse. Are you a fascist? So I think you should tell us. You're going to stand next to that guy. You're going to tell us how proud you are to know him and be around him. You should fucking tell us if you're a fucking fascist, you twat. You're kind of looking like a fascist, Jesse. You should really understand that. Now, Jeff Chan and Ranton. Let's be clear about something here. As far as Natan Levy is concerned, you are simply not the worst kind of Asian. The worst kind of Asian being Arabs, obviously. And I'm sure Natan was nice to you, and he gets to have you making nice comments about you, normalising his genocidal ideology. But let's be very clear about something. Israelis are really fucking racist, okay? Really fucking racist. If it suits him, you'll die. He won't care. Many people die in the pursuit of this ethno-state, okay? Israelis value no human life at all. He'll send you under the bus just like anyone else if it suits him, okay? On October the 7th, many Israelis were actually killed by Israeli soldiers, by the Israeli Air Force, because the Hannibal Directive was enforced, and the Hannibal Directive states that it's better to kill Israelis than allow them to be taken hostage. I'm going to link you some stuff about that. I'm going to link a lot of stuff about that, okay? Now I know that Asians who do well, who become well known, are often considered to be somewhat sellouts by other Asians, because you to do well, you have to perform whiteness, fit in with white people, fit in with neoliberal ideology. And in this case, fit in with a genocidal ideology, with a fascist ideology, an ideology that espouses an ethno-state. That's what you're doing here. Do you really think you would want to be part of that ethno-state? Do you think you'd be allowed to be part of that ethno-state? No, you wouldn't. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're the sellouts, like so many Asians who've done well for themselves. I don't know. But you should consider whether you really want to be associated in years to come with this fascist ideology, with support for the first live-stream genocide in history. Is that what you really want? If not, you really need to dissociate yourself from Zionism in public, you need to dissociate yourself from Natan Levy, and you need to dissociate yourself from the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship season. That's what you need to do. If you don't want to be seen in years to come as supporting this, because you don't have much excuse by this time. You really don't. Yeah, Leo Rocus. This is your project. It's a worthwhile project in martial arts terms. I used to like your videos. I used to watch them a lot. I stopped watching them because you appeared to become more concerned with making money than with the progression of martial arts culture in a positive direction. And yeah, you've really taken a nosedive with this one, I've got to say. Now, I don't know how much you support Zionism. I don't know, I know you're Lithuanian, I don't know what that means for your attitude towards Jews or towards Zionism, okay? But you're looking like you don't really care about this. All you care about is money. You don't stand for anything. You've got no follow through, really. The least you can do in this case is blur out a fucking Star of David on that uniform in every fucking frame. The least you can do. And also, do not allow Natan Levy in the next season. By that time, if it's shocking to me that you're all still supporting this guy, because Israel has got such a bad reputation around the world now. Do you even look at anything? Any news ever? Oh, God. Really, you should pull the whole of the current season. You really should. Now, why am I not addressing Natan Levy? Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's a lost cause. He's born a Zionist, born into Zionism, steeped in Zionism. He'll probably be a Zionist until the day he dies, even if he lives to be 110. And once the current state of Israel fails, which it almost certainly will, like it's being hollowed out, its economy is completely fucked, and it's such a pariah state now, I give Israel maybe 10 years. Anyway, once that collapses, he'll probably try and, help create a new state, a new Jewish homeland, a new ethno-state for Jews. He'll probably be doing that. My concern here is that his ideology is being normalised in martial arts culture. It's being normalised for people whose whole thing is learning to fight and kill people. That's a big problem. You're normalising the idea that genocide is fine, and that being right-wing is fine. You're normalising support for a brutal genocide that's been going on for over a year. That's what you are doing, and that is the problem here. Now, I've spent years trying to show another way, trying to show that martial arts should be used to help people who are marginalised, who are oppressed, and to empower them. Gotta say, I've not been getting very far with it, but anyway. It is actually what Choy Lee Fut was created for. It's why I go on about the Choy Lee Fut Code of Conduct. You can't retcon your social media posts, okay? It's been going on for over a year. Fuck all has been said by any of you about Palestine over this last year. You can't go back and say, oh, I did actually support Palestine. I was actually anti the genocide. You can't go back and say that, because people will see that you never said anything. You did not have the courage of your convictions. They will see it. All you can do is delete any posts, any social media that shows any kind of support for it, shows any kind of association with people like Nat and Levy, with any Zionists. That's all you can do. Because in years to come, your names will not go down well. You will not have a good legacy when people look back and see that you supported it, actually. Or at the very least, you never actually tried to stop it. You never said anything about this genocide. They will see that. They will see in years to come that you are complicit in your silence. A lot of you posted that black square, and that was easy. Didn't solve racism, did it? Making real change takes work. It takes years. None of you have been prepared to do anything about it, to make real change. And I have to ask, why are you learning to be warriors when you never fight for anything? What do you think martial arts are for? Why are you learning martial arts if you're not going to stand for anything? You're a bunch of fucking cowards. You're a bunch of useless pieces of shit as far as I'm concerned. You've never been interested in making anything better for other people, ever. Any of you. Anyone who isn't like a nice white man who you approve of. Fucking twats. It is long past time to show you stand for something. Globalise the Intifada. Free Palestine.